After I received the call to the pastoral ministry from the Lord and had understood this, I had a mentor, who was the pastor of the parent church, the church that I was sent out from in Savannah, Georgia. And he had some pet expressions that he would say. One was a quote from another pastor, and it went like this: "To live with the saints in heaven, oh, that will be glory. But to live with them here on earth is another story." Another one he had was that we as pastors had to have a lamb's heart and the skin of a rhinoceros. He also once in a while told us that, you care for the sheep, but be careful. Every once in a while, the sheep will nip at you. And as I started out this, I talked about last time, I planted this little church on a college campus. And the vision of that church was that we were going to reach the kids on the college campus with the gospel and teach them what church was about. But in fact, I was learning more about what the church was about when I did this, because I started running into a variety of issues. And a lot of them had to do with the relationships with these kids in college that were away from home for the first time and trying to sort out college life and being a Christian there. But some of it had to do with dealing with personal attacks from people even within the congregation. Well, it happened that after we planted this church, about 5 years after we planted that campus church, that a little bit of background is that the church we planted was in one of the Baptist Collegiate Ministries buildings, which was nestled right on the edge of the campus, the college campus. And so we had natural outreach to the students that were in the dormitory. And they came to me after 5 years and they said, look, the convention policy for using this building as a church plant means that you were only supposed to be able to use it for 4 years, and you're already a year over. And that kind of sent us back on my heels. I said, okay, so we started looking for another place of worship. We ended up moving the church to a YMCA on Sunday morning. And then on Sunday evenings, we set up a campus ministry, hopefully to maintain the campus connection. But lo and behold, it just didn't all seem to fit together right, and we lost the vision for the church. And in an attempt to revision, I ended up with some difficulties from one of the leadership couples in the church that didn't like the direction I was taking the church in at that time, and actually had sought to have my credentials removed. And so we tried to then relaunch the church, and nothing was working. But I learned something. There were a lot of tests in the pastoral ministry. So I ended up with one of the most difficult things I ever had to do, was to shut down this little church that I was the planter, the church planter pastor. After 6 years of us meeting together and having a glorious time reaching kids on the college campus, and it was just beautiful, I had the unfortunate responsibility to shut down the work. And that was hard. But I wasn't ready to quit the ministry at that stage. I sent out 200 resumes to churches all over the United States that I thought might be a good fit. And I wanted to talk to them. And I heard nothing. Absolutely zero. And I came to a crisis point. I started to think, am I really called to this work or not? Or have I just been kidding myself all along? Is it really something that God has called me to do, or is it something that I called myself to do? And so there I was. So I decided, well, let me just test the water. So I put some resumes out to some local, I saw a couple ads looking for guys who had engineering degrees that were self-starters and would work on their own, which is what I like to do, in some of the pulp and paper converting facilities around the Savannah area. So I sent a notification to them by email, a little letter of intent, and immediately I got a call back, or at least emails back, said, "We want to talk to you. We are very much interested in having you work for us." And that was on a Friday. And I mulled over that all weekend. But by Monday morning, I came to a conclusion that I just could not proceed because I could not see myself giving up the calling that God had put on my life to the pastorate. And so I contacted him, told him I wasn't going to go forward with this. Well, that started some things happening, because as soon as I did that, I had a couple things happen. I got some responses back pretty quickly thereafter from some churches that I sent out resumes to almost a year earlier. And not only that, but I also got a call from a local church in Savannah that was looking for an interim pastor. And I ended up taking that interim pastorate for a period of time while I was pursuing these other resumes, these other churches that had contacted me. And I think it all ties back to this, that it was part of me passing a test, so to speak. Now, in the scriptures, it says in 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 10, "Therefore, brothers, be all the more diligent to confirm your calling and election." That has a lot to do with about our call to an election to salvation. But it also has to do, I believe, with our calling to what God has called us to be in his redemptive program. And for me, that was the pastoral ministry. And so this was a test for me. It was a test to see if I was going to be faithful to the calling. But I don't think it was really a test to show God that I was going to be faithful. God already knew that. He already knew the decision I was going to make. The important part of this test was for me to know that God had really called me. And because I knew that, because I could not give up the calling that he placed on my life. And so for every believer, there's a calling in our life. And especially for every pastoral minister, I believe there's a time where they reach this test. It's a test of consecration. It's a test that you will know if you're really set apart to this work. I believe it's the test that Peter had after the resurrection, when he met Jesus on the beach, and Jesus asked him 3 times, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter had to answer 3 times, "Yes, Lord. You know that I love you." I believe that was a test of consecration so that Peter would know that he was truly called, because the Lord told him, "Feed my sheep, take care of my sheep. Do the work, Peter, that you're called to do." I believe these tests are for us to know that God has called us to do the work and to be faithful to the calling he's given us.